Welcome, everyone, to Christiana's Psychic Cafe. It's so nice to have you with me today. We have a really exciting show today. We're going to be speaking with Theresa Pridemore, who is the artist of the brand new Portland Tarot. And I have to share just a little bit of information here. I'm actually holding my Portland Tarot right here. And I'll tell you the story of how Portland Tarot came into my life. I'd seen it sort of floating around Facebook, but I noticed right away that it was not, shall we say, too traditional. And I'm not always a fan of non-traditional decks. However, I had the good fortune of meeting Jamie Morris, who was the co-author of the deck, and she was kind enough to give me a copy of the Portland Tarot. So I had the opportunity to really look at it. And, you know, it is an unusual deck. Right now, it's just a 23-card Major Arcana. It will be a full 79-card deck. Theresa will tell us about that in the interview. But the more I get to know this deck, the more I like it. And I'll tell you all the reasons. I like it because it honors the energy of the cards while truly being young, modern, and creative. I like it that Theresa, and you'll see this during the interview, Theresa really thought about what images she wanted to put in each card. They're not all incredibly traditional. Some are. It is the Portland Tarot. It honors the city of Portland. And so the World card is called the city. In its name, of course, it's not traditional, but in its image, it kind of is. Other cards are less so. Here's the Wheel of Fortune. That's a really interesting card. And the Empress, in fact, she and I will talk a little bit about the Empress. It's a card I particularly like. So I really love this deck. I love what she's done with it. And I love her and I love the author, Jamie Morris. Now, they are getting ready to do a second edition printing. And it is funding right now. So you'll have an opportunity to participate in this project by helping to fund it. And I want to show you this. This is the little white book. It's getting bigger. But this is the little white book. It's actually just sort of a folded up pamphlet. But it is so much fun. Here's a section called Your Daily Tarot Commute. Remember, of course, this is the Portland Tarot, so it's all about the city. Make the Portland Tarot your daily bridge to the divine. Drive, walk, bike, dance, skate, or swing your way across the sparkling span and punch the clock of consciousness each day. In addition to earned insight income, you'll receive these benefits. Positive possibilities alerts, occasional rough road warnings, creative glimmerings, attaboy or attagirl when you're on the right track, friendly redirection when you're not. So why do I love that? Because it's fun, it's youthful, and it's absolutely the way I see tarot. So before we go to the interview, I wanted to do our card of the week, and I'm actually going to draw it from this deck. So let's see what we got. The sun. And you know, I meant to ask Theresa why the boy in the sun is wearing the British flag on his sweater. I see that Jamie's in the chat room. Maybe she knows and maybe she'll tell us. But let's talk about the sun. For me, the sun is permission, but also a clear directive from the universe to let yourself shine, to use your skills, your abilities, and to live out loud and not to let anyone or anything take your shine away from you. So this week, let yourself shine. Let it be out there. You are the light. You hold the light within you. Let yourself shine as brightly as the sun. That's what this card says. Now, let's go to the interview in just one moment. I want to share just a little bit. Those of you who have seen my interviews with Helene Martz have laughed because it seems like every time I have Helene on, we have technical issues. And we always joke it's because, you know, she and I are just too powerful. Well, the video for the interview, the audio is perfect. The video is perfect enough that you can really see how beautiful Theresa is, but it's not perfect. It's a little jumpy. I've never seen anything like this. In all my years of working with video recording, this is the first time this had happened. And of course, the expression is keeping Portland weird. And this is just a little bit weird. So enjoy it or not. And I want to give you the first question I actually didn't add into the video. We started out, I was pretty much commending Theresa because, you know, a lot of artists take on tarot because it's a great artistic challenge. But Theresa has a resonance for tarot. She's studied tarot. She really is a tarot reader. She knows it and she gets it. So we started out with me asking her to talk about her connection to tarot. Let's go to the video now.
Yes, I've been studying for a few years now, and even though I didn't study heavily when I first was intrigued by tarot, what intrigued me about tarot wasn't just the possibilities as an artist to explore themes. It really was the tarot itself and the ability to communicate with our own divine nature through the medium. So
tell us about that. How did tarot first come into your life?
You know, it's funny. I've been trying to remember exactly when that happened, and I can't. And I have a feeling it must have happened when I was young, or I must have seen something, because this didn't come from nowhere. And you know how time makes you forget things. And so I thought that I just started having these harebrained ideas about doing a tarot deck when I moved to Portland a few years after that. And come to find out, a friend from college contacted me out of the blue and said, "Oh, I'm so excited you're doing this project. I remember when you were talking about it in college, about how you wanted to do a tarot deck." And I thought, really? You know, now that I think about it, I remember having brought that up. So it's funny. It must have just resurfaced in my consciousness once I moved to Portland, where there's a much stronger New Age community. There's, you know, I was more surrounded by people who studied the intuitive arts. And so there was a higher permission level once I got here. But yeah, it's funny because I found out after I started studying tarot, oh God, I can't remember what the year was. It was a few years back. I started talking to my grandmother about it and found out she had done tarot readings also when she was younger, and people would come to her house on a weekly basis trying to get readings, and everything she predicted, she said, happened within 2 weeks. That was kind of how the cards worked for her. So it was fascinating to see that there was a connection between me and my grandmother with this medium as well, and it was a really fun and surprising connection. So I feel like tarot's kind of been percolating in my world, and it just kind of exploded for me in the last few years.
Wow. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Mississippi for the most part.
Really now?
Yeah. You're in Florida. I mean, it's a different culture, but you could probably see a little bit of, you know, people coming in from Mississippi and Georgia and Alabama there. It's fascinating. It was a fascinating place for me to grow up. I was an Army brat. I was born in Germany, so I kind of traveled a lot. We moved a lot, and Mississippi was the strangest place for me to end up at for so long. It was good for me in a way because I got to live somewhere that was very different from me, and it helped me identify who I was through that contrast. And then when I moved to Portland, I was like, oh, I can just be myself here. It's amazing.
You know, and that's the thing. thing. I've never been to Portland, but you'd have to live under a rock to not get the context of
Yeah.
what that vibe is. But talk to me about that. First of all, how'd you end up in Portland?
Um, at the time, my partner at the time and I had been, let's see, let me go back. I had just was about to finish college, and for years, it had been my mission to leave Mississippi as soon as humanly possible. As soon as I was done with my schooling, I was going to run screaming, ideally to the West Coast. And my partner at the time, he did some kind of quiz that kind of helped you figure out where you were best suited to live. And the two places that stood out to him were Portland and Richmond, Virginia, which was near his family at the time. And he said, okay, those are the two places I'd be willing to go. You take your pick. And so I picked Portland, and I just felt this immediately once he suggested that, this strong connection to this place. And so I came here to visit some friends for a couple of weeks, right around when the cherry blossoms are blooming, and it's just the weather is nice and sweet, and we're getting the first like blush of summer kind of easing and creeping in. And I just fell in love. I just immediately, I came back. I came by myself that time. I came back and I said, that's it, we're moving there. And of course, then he really wanted to move to Richmond, but there was no arguing. I get my way. So we moved to Portland. So that's the story. And I have not regretted it a moment. I just love it here.
Yeah, well, apparently because you chose it as the theme for your tarot deck, and
Yes.
talk about that, at some length today. But let me ask you, first of all, as a tarotist, as someone who has had tarot in your life, what existent decks did you or do you prefer to work with?
Right now my favorite deck is the Collective Tarot. I recently acquired that deck, and I know that there are some I think I haven't researched it fully. I was under the impression that there are some Portland artists that have worked on that. It might be some West Coast artists, so I don't want to speak out of turn on that. But I love that deck. It's really, it's funny because I deliberately wanted my deck to be a little bit subversive, but in a playful enough way that it was generally accessible to people. And this is a truly subversive deck. It's really like challenging social concepts and stereotypes, and it twists some of the cards in an interesting direction that I really appreciate. And sometimes when you get a deck and it's not just a copy of the deck, like you can get a deck and someone's used it and they have imbued it with some kind of magic or energy of their own. This deck has the magic on its own. Like I get really clear readings from it. I have just fallen in love with it. Jamie Morris, my co-writer, almost stole it from me because when she saw that I had it and she looked and she's like, "That's the deck I've been wanting. You have to give it to me." Instead, I got her one for her birthday. But
Good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful deck, and it's my recent favorite. It's funny. There are other decks that I've liked. I got more into Oracle stuff through the Brian Froud Fairy Oracle. That was my first really experience with any kind of deck where I was using it a lot, and I loved that deck. It also communicated really well. Of course, you have to really look at the book. You can't just rely on your knowledge and structure of the existing system to use it, but it can still, well, unless you've used it a long time. I have a friend who basically it just talks to her, so she doesn't need the book. But that was a great deck for me that kind of brought me into tarot, kind of eased me into getting that experience of working with a card system. And then I've used the Golden Tarot. I liked that for a while. I don't, it's like I've changed. It's so funny. I've noticed this with tarot readers over time, the deck that you really feel like a resonance with changes over time. So, that one I haven't used as much lately. I'm trying to think of others that I've used that I've really enjoyed. That was my favorite for a while. And now I'm kind of, Jamie's been a great collaborator for me because she's opened my eyes to other decks that I haven't even seen or known about. which I'm kind of glad before I started mine that I didn't know of any others, because I feel like if I see a crossover between my deck and someone else's, I'm like, well, that's great. I know that must be a collective consciousness thing, because
Sure.
I sure didn't just, rip that concept from them. So I'm happy with it then, because I know that I didn't. I mean, I don't mind getting influenced or inspired by other people's work, but it kind of helps. So now I'm like, okay, I've got my ideas firmly in place, and then if I'm inspired here and there, it's fine. I don't feel like I'm kind of taking a big chunk of inspiration that, someone might feel a little bit like, wait a minute, I did that. What are you doing? Because I did, after I'd started mine, got to meet a gentleman named Robert Scott, who is creating a New York tarot deck called the Urban Tarot. And he had done a Kickstarter a year before the one that I did in spring. And it is a total New York-based tarot deck. And we talked and we had great fun because there was so much crossover between our projects. But then I could at least honestly say, hey, I've been working on this a while. This is totally not deliberate. We just happen to be tapping into the same kind of thing. So it's really funny, like all those little connections. But yeah, I think once he's done with his deck, I would like a copy of that one too, because I'm really intrigued by it.
Well, I kind of hope it's the beginning of a thing. The idea of a tarot themed to a place, and I was thinking about that. How many other times has that been done? Well, there was Karma Tarot.
Oh, yeah,
based on life in a Danish artist community. And I can't think of any others. Can you?
Mm-hmm. I just heard the other day about what was it? Oh God, I've forgotten already what it's called. It seems to be like a New York community, some kind of New York community, another tarot deck. Since then, people have told me there's one. It's like a Vegas tarot deck.
Okay.
Out there somewhere. I haven't seen any of it yet. I haven't looked it up. What else? I'm trying to think. I feel like there's something else out there, so there is a little bit of that's already happened. People have already created decks that are kind of themed with their location, so it's fun. It's fun to see that having already happened. And, for me, like, Portland is such a perfect place to have its own tarot deck. I mean, this is a very spiritual place, and there's a playfulness to this place too that I'm really excited to bring into tarot. It feels like there's a great crossover. So I can see other cities it would be really fun to develop tarot decks for, probably. Maybe European cities.
Well, it's an interesting thing, and I think I misspoke. I think Karma Tarot is actually. Gosh, it's not Danish. I can't remember now, but it's a different place than that, just for the record.
Yeah.
The point is, it's a place tarot, and
yeah.
About the thing that's interesting is, like, you can see, okay, a New York tarot, easy to see. A Portland tarot makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But a South Dakota tarot,
yeah.
There are some cities or states or towns or provinces that would lend themselves, I think, better.
Oh, I agree. I've thought about this because people now say you should do another city after you're done with Portland. Use it as an excuse to travel and make more tarot decks. And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, my list would be a very short list of places that I think would be really tarot-centric. Like, okay, San Francisco, Seattle, maybe. New York is an obvious one, and let's see, what else? Maybe Austin, Texas, because that's a really quirky place, maybe. But I can't see the appeal being very broad too. I mean, that would be something that I would really consider. Put that much work into something, you want people to really be drawn to it and be interested in using it. So otherwise, I just go make art. Spiritual art in general. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be a 78 card deck. So let's see, what else have I thought would be good? Louisiana, New Orleans would be an awesome tarot deck.
And do we know that hasn't been done?
I don't know. No.
It's a no-brainer.
Well, the funny thing is there's probably decks out there that have been done for some of these places maybe, but they don't maybe have access to the publishing angle, to getting their stuff out on the web. I think there are a lot of people in this world who've actually made tarot decks, but they just don't want to go through all the hassle of getting it out in the world, and they don't care. Maybe they made it for themselves, so, it's interesting. I think that there's a lot more out there than we know about.
I think that's absolutely true. And one of the things I want to speak with you about today is sort of the way that you've published your deck and the way that you're funding your deck, and this week on the Psychic Cafe, making the announcement that they would be on this week. And I mentioned that Portland Tarot and that it's crowdfunded. And in the chat room, someone said, well, of course, it's the Portland Tarot. Of course. It's
Yeah, right.
And, and I thought that, an interesting thing that, what you're doing. And when we look at the cards, we'll see that what you're doing with the cards is very innovative.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole way that you've built this deck and created this, also innovative, and in a lot of levels very Portland,
Oh yeah.
It all kind of comes together.
Like I didn't get most of these ideas just on my own. I mean, you absorb it in this environment for sure, because there's a lot of people who have startup projects that they're trying to do, and they'll do, crowdfunding, they'll do parties, they'll do whatever. Like, it's a very scrappy, resourceful town. It was funny, yesterday some raccoons appeared in my backyard, and of course I immediately had to go look up the totem for it, because I felt like they were really trying really hard to get my attention. So I'm like, okay, there's a message here. And it was all about being resourceful. You can find the resources you need. And I'm like, well, what's more me or Portland than that? That's what we do here. We just, okay, you have a dream, go make it happen. It'll come together. Keep going. You'll figure it out. It's really funny. So yeah, you're totally on the nose about that.
So before we talk about the deck, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your art career in general. Did you go to school for art? What are other projects that you do? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I studied at the University of Southern Mississippi, got a bachelor's in fine arts with an emphasis in graphic communication, and I went into school knowing I was going to study art. It's not like a major that I shifted into, but I have been really lucky because I've been very supported. It's funny. There's a two-way street in terms of the support I've gotten as an artist in my family, especially from my mother. She really encouraged my artistic side, and I was lucky that opportunities appeared for me to really explore that. I was also given the message that you can't make a living as an artist, and you have to be a graphic designer if you want to be an artist for a living. And so there were limits put on that. So I got a really confusing message as a kid around arts, but I'm lucky that I think that I manifested some really beautiful things even before college. At the time when I was going to school, even in Mississippi, these creative programs available, so that was encouraging my problem solving and creative side, and there were art parts involved with that. And then when we moved to Jackson, Mississippi, an older friend that ran this comic book shop that I always rode my bike over to and would show him my comics that I did at the time. And he was very encouraged. He said, oh, you're moving to Jackson. They have an art program there. And so from junior high on, got to spend 2 hours a day in art education at the museum in Jackson.
Wow.
And so they would take us up to exhibits, and we would get to see other artists, and it was great. I mean, we did pottery, we did photography, we did drawing and painting, everything, the whole shebang. And so I came into my college education with like a basic arts education from having been in that program for so long. It helped me a lot. So I am very lucky, but I don't personally feel like going to college is a requirement to be good at it. I think that there are things that I learned that were great, that taught me how to be a professional, that taught me certain ways of thinking about art that have been helpful to me. There are things that I've had to unlearn, ways of thinking that I've had to unlearn, letting that critic in too soon in the process, not letting my own free expression flow, because there are right ways to do things and wrong ways to do things, and I have been like, that's when I started really making more art, when I learned to let go of some of those rules. So it's helped me and it's hindered me, in ways, because I I took it to heart. It kind of went in there with my voice about, what you can and can't do as an artist in the world. So that's my background. And then I went into my, I had a great job for 3 years, my first 3 years in Portland. I always did something. I worked at Kinko's and graphic services, I've always had some kind of tie-in with my work, even when I was working kind of more college jobs. But then after my 3 years there at that company, I did, email marketing and craft project design and photography and things. I went off on my own and ran my own business, and I've been running that since 2006. Even with 1 year break, sort of break, half break, when I worked for a year at tarot.com. So I was a graphic designer for tarot.com for a year.
Really? What a great gig.
Yeah, it was great. It was such a perfect fit for me. And I think it was, after I left, because I'm just not an office job person, I just realized that about myself. I'm too sensitive to office politics and, all the energetics of working in office that I had to just go back. I finally said, okay, that's real for me. I'm no longer going to put this story on myself that I should be able to take a real job, because that's just shooting me in the foot, and it's been doing nothing but shooting me in the foot for years and years. So I went back on my own, and I really appreciated what I had created for myself more. So I've had a lot of time working with other people, small businesses, developing their brand, developing their, authentic message, and coaching them. And I'm like, well, it's finally time to just kind of go forward and do that for me. So there's a business angle too that it's a mixed blessing. I'm really glad. I love my clients. I actually love my work more since I've started this project. But there's a side of it that, I already forgot my point. What was I saying? There's that part where I've kind of neglected my thing for the sake of other people's things. And it's now I'm like taking that time and putting that effort and energy into it. It's brought more joy into my work to have done that. I wish I'd done it sooner. I wish I'd done it a lot sooner.
I am reminded of the expression, the cobbler's kids never have shoes.
Isn't that so true? Yeah, it is. I mean, that's always my excuse, and I'm lucky because I get a lot of referral-based business. I don't have to heavily market myself. But for this now, all that stuff, that was the point I was trying to get to. Those messages my mother gave me it's a gift and it's a curse at times, and the gift is that I learned a lot that actually let me give something like the Portland Tarot some real legs to stand on so that it can continue to grow and thrive in this current, how we do things, the web marketing and, making connections online. That's something I can do now, and I understand it. So it helps me. It helps me in the long run. And so it's a gift, but also you have to unlearn aspects of that, that kind of, there are programs that go with that.
Sure. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I've got my Portland Tarot here, and I am going to ask you, I'm just going to sort of randomly hold up cards so people who haven't met the deck yet can get a sense of it.
Okay.
And I would like to ask you to tell us, you don't have to talk about the cards specifically that I'm holding up, and I will have some questions about some of the cards. Just tell us, what is the Portland Tarot?
Okay. Oh, while you're holding up cards?
Go. Yes. 1, 2, 3, go.
Okay. Portland Tarot is a tarot deck that I feel like it's actually like an entity communicating to me from the beyond. It kind of picked me. It picked Jamie too. It basically hired my co-writer for me. It said, "Hey, guess what? You're going to go work for this thing." And then she introduced herself to me, and then I realized it had hired her on my behalf. So it really wants to find a fun way to make tarot feel more accessible for people. And of course, I think that there are a lot of decks that actually do that. It's not like it's the only one, but I felt pulled to make a deck right when I started really studying tarot. I was feeling a craving for a deck that had a little bit more modern imagery, but I also didn't want it to feel any less magical. So there was a difficult well, maybe a difficult balance. I haven't found it as difficult as I expected to strike a balance between a mysterious feeling to an image that might evoke your intuition in a way that if you just were faced with like an everyday kind of picture, it wouldn't. It would lock you into your everyday kind of reality. But it still needed some relatability. I would feel that as I was in the beginning tarot, like trying to figure out, well, what cards really align with different kinds of career paths. I mean, you look at the Rider-Waite deck and it's hard when you're starting out to really ground yourself in the imagery and to have it evoke an image of something from your everyday life, very easily. Certain like universal concepts that I think are really easy to grasp, but then there are specific things that are challenging to read as a beginner. And then there's, of course, there are darker cards in the deck, and I'm not like adverse to introducing darkness into a deck because it's part of our human experience, but I didn't want those dark cards to put someone so far off that they couldn't relate to it, that they were immediately terrified of the Devil card or the Tower card, and they couldn't be present with a reading or present with tarot. For some people, that turns them off that much,
Right.
So wanted to do some of that.
And yeah. Since we're talking about the Tower, you have the weirdest tower I have ever seen. Your Tower card is called Mount St. Helens.
Yes.
And is really interesting. Can you talk about your process and what this image means to you?
Yeah. So I was thinking about having Jamie around. We were chatting about cards, and I was trying to be more traditional in my labeling for a while. And then one day I thought, you know what? I don't want the Hierophant to be the Hierophant. I want it to be something else. And then after I gave myself permission to do that, then the next thing was the Tower, because I'd been struggling with it. I'd been like, what's a good towery kind of place in Portland? And I'm like, well, Mount St. Helens is ultimate, really, it's explosive change, and it has happened, already.
in memorable time, yes.
Yeah, so I thought, well, gosh, it's pretty obvious. And then having that permission level with Jamie, she's like, I love tarot. I collect tarot cards. You totally feel free to change it up. That was great. And so the more I thought about it, I kind of, I have a quirky take on some tarot cards. We all build our personal inner scrapbook, I guess, of what a tarot card means in the context of our own lives. And the Tower card to me never felt, it's scary sometimes, depending on the context. But for me, it felt like, well, if I can ground that electric charge from the universe, if I can stay grounded, it can work for me. It can turn my world upside down in a way that I desperately need. And I like change a lot. So Death card, Tower card have never been that terrifying to me. So this is about shaking up your whole life. Your whole life is shaken up, and that actually, there's almost like creative, unlimited possibility when you reach that moment where everything's been torn down. Then there's all this potential in that, and so that's kind of a little bit of the feeling I was going for. And I go about things really organically. I started knowing that I wanted the Tower, and then I wanted to have a person in it because I really want a person in every card. That's my partner Jefferson, my very handsome, dapper partner Jefferson.
He is really cute. We gotta say that.
He's got this great outfit, and I'm like, well, of course he has to be in this outfit because I just love this outfit. And as we were getting ready to photograph it, I just had this image of the hat blowing off his head, kind of, I can't remember that painter who does like the hats and the apples. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. He's like I think he's an impressionist painter. I don't know. Anyways, I'm really not very good at art history for an artist. But anyways, it kind of reminded me of this painter that's kind of well known. And I thought, I would just love to do that. And so from there, it just went. And then I asked my friend Cynthia, who's on the Chariot, I said, hey, can you, she has a lot of wacky, weird things. Can you just photograph things in your house, and send them to me? I want weird things on this card, for it to feel really crazy and like a weird collage, So that's kind of evolved in. And so because Jefferson's an artist, it seemed really appropriate. Well, he's an artist among many things, but to have like the drawing, the figures that you use for drawing to be kind of falling out of his head, taking the place of the figures falling to the ground, so that there's still a little bit of that feeling of being out of control present in the image, despite the fact that he's so composed, you know.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. Now, a couple of things. As I was coming up, I'm obviously older than you are, there was this thing about feminist tarot.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, the Portland Tarot is a feminist tarot without advertising itself that way. And I'll tell you why I say that. The Fool is clearly female.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love that. And the Hanged Man is now the Hanged Woman.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me about how that is for you.
I just so love that you said that, because it makes me feel happy, because, you know, I thought being really out about the fact that that was a feminist tarot, and I was actually a friend of mine was trying to get an article in Bitch magazine about the deck to that effect, but they had already done an article on the collector tarot, so, you know, they weren't as into it. But I felt like there is a bit of a disconnect with tarot for women. There are a lot of images that are really hard to resonate with, that are not inclusive. And I did deliberately want to take a stance of trying to make this as diverse a tarot as I possibly could. I mean, Portland, for all its diverse, like, the beliefs about diversity, it's not actually a very diverse city, and that can be challenging at times. I have to really, you know, I have to be in my integrity about it. I want to make sure that every person I invite into a card, I'm inviting because their energy, they have something that's perfect about them for the card, you know, but also keep in mind, you know, that I want it to also be inclusive, and that might take a little bit of reaching out and, you know, trying to find people that fit in a number of ways. And so I also wanted it to be a more feminist deck. I took a deliberate different take on the Empress than is normal. You know, there's a bit of an agrarian imagery. I mean, she's a mother, and I mean, this is a friend of mine, and that's actually her daughter. So I wanted there to be life and green things and growing things to show fecundity and fertility and all that. But she's a businesswoman. You know, I kind of would get frustrated with the Empress card. I'm like, oh, okay, she can only sit on her throne in the middle of this field of wheat. You know, that's what she's supposed to do. And I thought, no, screw that. The Empress also has an empire. To me, the difference between the Empress and the Emperor is how they think about their empire. Empress is about kind of a collective, organic way of building empire. And I feel like the Emperor is more about protecting it and creating structure around that empire. He might build it as well, but he's like more about focusing on his will and what he wants to accomplish, he, she, whoever takes that emperor role. And the Empress is someone who's more focused on that community angle, trying to get buy-in from others, you know, being more collaborative in that process. And they both have their merits, you know. Mm-hmm. So I wanted them to both have an empire because, you know, they're both supposed to be rulers of an empire. So that was a deliberate choice.
So we see with this Empress, she actually has a desk in the background with a globe on it. Is that symbolic of her business work?
Yes. And I wanted her to actually have a visible empire behind her. You know, she wants to keep her eye on the people that she's helping to nurture and care for through her creative endeavors. And I wanted the deck to open a door for women to feel like they have a connection with that business side, that entrepreneurial spirit right in the deck. You know, I felt like there was an absence of that for female figures in tarot. So I have to tell you that I absolutely love the Hermit. Oh, thank you.
Me, I mean, again, never been to Portland, but that to me is such an honoring of our traditional hermit, mm-hmm. and so Portland. I really think you nailed it with this card.
Good, thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, and I wanted to something that came for me with the hermit is what does it mean to be a hermit today? It means you might have to turn your computer off. People take their technology with them wherever they go. And sometimes we hermit through the use of technology in a good way and in a bad way. Sometimes, technology helps us connect with people in a good way, so but a lot of the time we really need to leave it behind to get perspective. And so technology is a huge part of in terms of hermiting in a modern day and age.
Right, and now then his computer's in his tent. Is that
so
what's happening here?
Yeah,
Computer
so
in the tent.
tension. Yeah, it creates a question. Is he abandoning his technology to be a hermit, or is he bringing it with him on his quest when he should have left it? Or, what is the role of technology in terms of his hermiting? Because it just feels ever present to me. It feels like a part of the equation nowadays. If you're trying to, go do some soul searching, you have to really work hard to leave your phone behind or whatever, whatever the case may be.
So the Portland Tarot right now is a majors only deck. Is there a plan to expand it to a 78 card deck?
Yes, actually 79 cards, so it'll have the weird card.
That's right, the weird. Okay, yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask you about that. It's not a happy squirrel. It's not, I'm finding it, it's not an unknown card. It is the weird. Let me find it so I can show it to people. Tell us about card 22, the weird.
Yeah, so that card, the visuals for that are going to change in the second edition that I'm creating. It will have a person in it, me. I finally found my card that I was going to get to be on, because I kept putting a card aside for myself, and then I'd meet someone at the universe was like, guess what? There's that card. Sorry, you're off the list. So I'd say, okay, I guess I'll find a card somewhere. And then Jamie, like 3 days after we talked the first time, she just called me. She said, I know we just met, we just talked, but I had this thing in the bath. I was having a bath, and this idea came to my mind, and I had to tell you, it's a weird card. You need to have a weird card. And because Portland keeps it weird. That's our kind of our. So I thought, well, geez, there needs to be a weird. The weird card is about the space between spaces, liminal spaces, point where you're not sure what's real and anything is possible, because that is so Portland kind of thing. I have not experienced that to the degree that I have in Portland in my whole life. That feeling of you hit this moment, and then all these possibilities open up before you. And if you can just, it's not a chariot thing. There's like a very strange feeling of being in another world, at that time. And magical things just kind of keep happening. And it's like you have a magic power for a little while, and that is why it's kind of night and day. It could be night, it could be day. You don't know. It's just this magical in-between time.
Okay, so 79 card deck, and where are we now? We're getting ready to do the second edition of the majors only. Is that what's happening now?
Yes. So my goal is to have the full deck done by fall of next year. I'm getting a little behind with all of this stuff, so it may be a little later, but that's my ultimate goal. I'm still working on the rest of the cards, and this deck, the reason I'm doing a second edition is the first edition, I actually was just trying to get a majors deck done for an event called World Domination Summit. And they had a Portlandia village, and they wanted me to come read tarot from my deck. And I thought, well, I don't have one yet. Let me see if I can finish some majors really quickly, wrap them all up, and I'll get a deck printed, and I'll do readings. And I thought, well, if I'm going to get one deck, I might as well get 100. Mm-hmm. So I got a small run of 100 just so I could sell them at the event, give them away to people, and just have something to show, because until you have something concrete, it's really hard for people to picture what you're up to.
Right.
So I did that, and I thought, oh, what the hell? I'll just sell them on my site too. And they, the stock I had allotted for that just sold out really fast. And so I thought, well, maybe even though I did a Kickstarter for the full deck in the spring, and because Kickstarter is all or nothing, I didn't reach my goal because I was trying to keep printing local, and that's a lot more expensive at large. I thought, well, what the hell, I'll go for another campaign. This time I'll do Indiegogo. That way I can keep whatever, and I'll get to make something. My goal was to make enough to get them in retail stores, because I thought, that I was finding that people were using the deck, especially people who are beginners to tarot, were finding it really easy to connect with a majors deck. It didn't feel too overwhelming. It felt like they could resonate with the images pretty well. So I thought, okay, you know what, I'll just go ahead and do the second edition. I had planned to tweak the art. I wanted to have an expanded reading guide that Jamie and I are working on together, and really go into the stories of how the cards were made, but also to give expanded interpretations. So that is the goal of that, and to make the packaging better for display on shelves. And right now, I don't know, we'll have to see. It's a week left, and we're close to $2,000 of the $4,000 goal. If I get 4,000, I can at least print digitally, which is it's digitally printed, that deck that you have. And it's a good quality. I would like to do offset printing if I can, but I can't do that unless I reach 6,000, which may or may not be getting there yet. But if I get 2,000, I definitely can fulfill rewards. I'll be able to get some deck again to stock up with. I won't have enough probably to place in retail, so I'm kind of crossing my fingers that we'll at least get the 4,000, and I can have enough to get it around, because I think that having it on shelves will be kind of the next. People can really just go to the store and buy it, or if they're curious, they can just grab a copy. And I think that'll help when the full deck is done, for people to have awareness, and maybe for people to, especially locally, to know about this as a potential deck for people who are wanting to get into tarot to try out.
Sure. So if people want to make a donation, we're on the countdown right now.
Yes.
What do they have to do, and when do they have to do it by?
It is until October 10th. So I guess as of the viewing of this, it'll be like about 4 or more days, it sounds like.
4 days.
So and let's see. You can go to theportlandtarot.com.
Theportlandtarot.com, and it's on the bottom of the screen, theportlandtarot.com.
Yes, and there is a link to the Indiegogo campaign right there, front and center. You can click that to go straight to the Indiegogo, or you can go to Indiegogo.com and do a search for the project, and you should find it that way too. We have some great perks available. You can buy 1 copy of the deck for yourself, or I actually wanted to put out the opportunity for people to buy these decks as Christmas gifts, because I think they make really good stocking stuffers. So I'm going to have this printing done in time for people to have things for Christmas gifts, or holiday gifts, I should say. And they can buy them in packs, and the bigger the pack they buy, the greater the discount. So even the biggest pack is pretty much close to wholesale price that'll ultimately be giving to stores. So that is a good deal. I have some beautiful metallic prints available of artwork, and people can choose what they want the artwork to be of. And then one of the options is, if someone really is that they could be on a piece of art in the major arcana for their own deck, I can create a custom piece of artwork with them using a photo that they have, or, if they're local, I can shoot it for them. And then we'll print up multiple copies of their card, so they'll have a set of decks, and they can replace the card of their choice with their card if they really want to. Wow. And they'll have it's like just a commissioned piece of artwork, tarot-centered work that honors them. And I don't know, I always feel like totems, You can consciously step into a new energy in your own life by choosing to participate in some kind of art project like that. We're stepping into an archetype, because this project is very much about archetypes. So I would relish in doing that with somebody who wanted to kind of invite a new energy into their life that way.
I think that's brilliant. And honestly, I think it's a great thing to do. And I think even once you're funded and you have everything you need, you should make this available
Oh,
as a thing. I think
yeah.
this is a thing. I love it. I'm
Oh,
just
thanks.
thinking of all my tarot friends and what cards they would want to be.
Yeah.
And, oh, it's just too cool.
It's very exciting. It's kind of like a, I mean, it's funny. I bring all of my experience actually doing this with people with their businesses into these cards. For me, if I invite someone to be a card, it's a very deliberate decision. And I really try to honor them and what journey they're on within the artwork, work closely with them to do that. So for me, it's important to have that personal connection to the cards. Otherwise, it doesn't resonate, it doesn't vibrate, I guess, as strongly. So it's a super fun process to work with people and to kind of intuit also, like, where are they going? What are they stepping into? Let's honor that visually. And I think it's pretty powerful. I mean, just me doing it myself as a third party, for this project has been very powerful. And I think it can do great things.
Absolutely. And one of the things I really see here is what you're doing with Portland Tarot in terms of the artwork,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of your freedom to reinterpret and reimagine the cards,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of making it be about a place,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of the crowdfunding.
Mm-hmm.
It's all really part of what I see as the new face of tarot. And
Mm-hmm.
that is not in any way to disparage the major companies that have made tarot available to
Yeah.
us, or the traditional artwork that really is the touchstone for what tarot is. It's not to replace or disparage that.
Yeah.
But if we don't keep moving, if we don't keep growing, we're not relevant.
Right. You want people to be able to connect to tarot. And that's part of, when I try to sit down and think, okay, what's the big mission of what I'm doing? It's not just to make a tarot deck. If it was just that, it wouldn't be as exciting. I feel like the big mission is to find a way. It's funny because I don't feel like this is a mainstream deck at all. There's a quirkiness to it that is absolutely not mainstream. There are ideas that are not mainstream, but I feel like it's actually a little bit, like, I think even among people who are attracted to tarot, there are those among us who are kind of want something that's like, oh, if I can't relate to it, I want something a little bit, is trying a little bit to woo me, in that way. And I wanted it to be that, I'm absolutely fine with that. I think that what I would love is if anybody came to the deck and said, you know what, now I want to do tarot. Now I really want to use this tool to help me day to day to improve my life. And I did not want to do that before because I did not feel like I could connect with it. Then I am a very happy person, because then that's an open door for them to explore all the traditional decks, to go further. I just think it's intimidating. Tarot is incredibly intimidating, unless you're crazy. I'm just kidding.
Now, what does that say?
I feel a little crazy because I said, oh my God, I love tarot. Excessively reading books and playing with the cards, and I feel that intimidation, but it took me a long time to get around to it, and that's part of it. It takes time. You have to be invested and a little crazy in the best possible way.
No, you're right. You'll get no argument from me. It's a fact.
So, I wanted people to feel like, you know what? I don't have to learn a bunch of stuff and pull out a deck. I have this book here, and maybe some of that traditional knowledge will rub off on me while I'm doing it, but I won't even notice I'm learning something. That's kind of my hope, is that people will be like, see myself in this deck. I feel like it's connected to me as a modern day person. It's relevant. And then when they start to get excited about what they're learning, then I'm hoping that they will expand and buy other things. I'm also hoping that this deck relates to people who collect decks, who love tarot, who've studied it. I won't not all the meanings are in line with traditional meanings exactly. I'll argue about what those are, but I hope it offers an interesting new perspective, as opposed to feeling like, because I'm totally respectful towards the traditional things, and when I twist it, it's very deliberate. When I pivot something in a slightly different direction, it's just because I'm responding to something I feel a need for,
Right.
Right.
Well, Theresa Pridemore, I am so grateful to you for spending this time with us on the Psychic Cafe and for giving the world this amazing gift, the Portland Tarot.
Thank you.
ThePortlandTarot.com. Go there. You got 4 days to support this project. Keep it weird. Is that what we say? Keep it weird.
Yes, keep everything weird. You can keep Portland weird, but keep yourself weird. Keep your town weird. Yeah, keep it weird for sure.
And, why not share some energy with the Portland Tarot? This is a great project. I hope that when you're ready to release your 79 card deck, you'll come share that with us as well.
Absolutely. I would be thrilled to.
Okay. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon.
You're amazing. I really appreciate this time.
Thank you. Okay. And we're
Yes. I've been studying for a few years now, and even though
Thank you so much to Theresa Pridemore for that fabulous interview and for the fabulous Portland Tarot. The great thing that was happening in the chat room during that is people were actually staying on the show, but going to the funding site and making donations right during the show. You got 4 days, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, to make a donation to fund the Portland Tarot. It's worth it. Support art, support tarot, support Theresa and Jamie. Go for it. And thank you so much to the people who were watching this show and did that right here, right now. How awesome is that? So a couple of other things. Bonnie Chevet stopped by the chat room, and she has a great review of Portland Tarot. Make sure you check that out. And you might remember my guest from last week, Jordan Hoggard. Well, he's got his own show on this network now. It starts this coming Thursday, and guess who's going to be a guest? That's right, me. So, Thursday night, be back here to welcome Jordan to Penn and to say hi to me as well. I also want to let you know that next Sunday, I will have a really interesting guest. His name is Jim Cummins. He's a personal friend of mine. He is an 80-year-old astrologer, and he is the only person who has ever been able to explain astrology to me in a way that I really get it. And he's going to be on the show to talk to us about what's going on the planet. So that should be very, very interesting. I also want to get you to mark your calendars for October 15th. That's our next Global Tarot Circle on WebEx. You can find out everything you need to know, including signing up for my weekly newsletter and making an appointment for a reading with me by phone or Skype simply by going to my website, tarotbychristiana.com. Again, Thanks to Theresa and everyone in the chat room, everyone watching the show. Have a great week.